All right, I thought I would do a scenic version of a Valentine's Day card. I saw someone did a scene. I am sorry, I forgot who did that. I would I would want to give you credit for it, but if it was you, I don't know. Post down in the comments section. We want to kind of point you out, but they had these kind of hearts as their clouds in the sky. They weren't real super definitive ones, but they were lighter ones. So it was obvious they were hearts, but real kind of light and airy, and it just a really fantastic look to the piece. Now I thought I would use nature set number 9 here, and it has this moon here, but I'm going to change that moon to kind of a little bit more of a heart. All right, so. This is a pre-folded card, and oh gosh, let me get the measurements here for you. Some people really want to know that type of thing. So folded, this is going to be a 4 by 5.5. So we're talking about a whole size of 8.5 by that 5.5. It's kind of a I don't know. It's kind of a different size than I'm normally working with, but this place that I go and buy a lot of paper at, Kelly Paper, my local paper source, has this size here in the pre-folded version, and I don't know, they always sell their supply that's been sitting on the shelf for a year at greatly reduced prices. So I'm always buying their, I don't know, they're kind of odds and ends and whatnot. Okay, so I'm going to blot off the edge. This is a technique that I recommend to a lot of people, stamping sky imagery. I mean, I'm stamping this in the darkest color possible, which is black, okay? And I mean, you can stamp this out in a light blue or something like that, where the edges aren't going to be so prominent, okay? That's if I'm stamping, light blue on white paper. I have to stamp this in a very dark color because we're working on a dark, violet page here, so paper. So, but if you just kind of blot off the edge, it will transition on the edges very nicely and more kind of effortlessly into the surrounding area, and you won't be left with this hard rectangular shape in your sky. It'll still be a rectangle, but it'll transition lightly on the edges like that, okay? All right, so that is the moon, of course. Now let's take and... yeah, I mean, I could stamp out the rest of the scene here, too, right now. Maybe I'll do that. All right, now I'm debating on whether to use this technique that I've been doing lately by putting the inks down on here first, the illumination inks. I think I'm going to do that. Let's do that. That's a really fun type of process and a little bit different than my typical processes in the past of stamping everything out and then doing this kind of illumination later. You can do this because we're working on a dark cardstock, or it works really great on the metallics too. Okay, so let me just create a horizon line here. Okay, and we'll say this horizon line from a given point is going to be my water, of course. Okay, I'm not going to do this too hard, all right? Because I want to blend everything out a little bit too, okay? So I'm just going in with some Hero Arts, just unicorn white. My pad is really quite dry. In fact, if it's too dry, I'll switch up here. Okay, you can see it right there, right? When this was on, I was thinking, man, can I see that at all? Okay, now this is going to be like a fold out, like a 2-page spread type of thing. It's going to be a very small spread, being that this paper is, not big. Okay. I'm kind of transitioning this down a little bit, putting a little bit more up top here, which I don't know wouldn't necessarily be how it would be, but alright, so I have a little bit more ink here. See, it's lighter and it transitions out there, because this is going to be my light source right here. So we got that moon right there, and let's create this little kind of reflection, that reflected light down here going directly down from that moon like so, okay? Alright, now this doesn't have to be perfect or anything like that. We have other images that we're going to use on here, but since I do this little column of light like that, then what I like to do is I like to create that kind of transition from that center column out to the sides like this. Okay. And believe me, it really doesn't have to be perfect or anything like that, okay? You see that right there? Doesn't that look like water? It's just a column, and then you just kind of wipe it here. Now the thing, okay, now let's troubleshoot here, okay? A lot of people give me this thing that, oh my gosh, you make it look so easy and stuff, or, oh, I tried that and it was like so hard, all right? Now, I am going with a very dry applicator right here. Let me just show you right here on this backside, okay? Even if I use that worst technique possible in the whole world, you can barely see that, right? So, if you work slower and a little bit more methodically with the amount of ink you have on here, look at that, it's even picking up that purple off my paper. But to show you how hard I was just pressing down on this backside, if you just work with very, less ink on your applicator, it'll just be a much easier process for you, okay? Don't think that adding more ink and doing it thicker, thicker slathering is going to go faster, okay? Because if you have to kind of blend in kind of unintentional, unwanted marks, that's going to take longer than just never having them to begin with, okay? So, just go with a very dry application. Well, your pad's really wet. Well, what you do is you just ink it up like that and just blot it off quite a bit, okay? And then just go on like this. The thing that people aren't used to doing is they're not used to going like this and not really seeing anything happening and having to kind of repeatedly apply for it to be visible at all. See that kind of glow starting to happen right there? See, that is control, okay? So just work slower, It doesn't mean that it's like a slow process. I'm adding this ink. I mean, that took care of my entire horizon line right down there, and that took like a minute, right? So just don't work so fast, Don't work with, super inky, globby amounts of ink on whatever applicator you're using, and you'll have a lot of control over it, okay? But I do understand where you're coming from, though, because if you don't use your things like white pigment ink or your pigment ink pads very often, they are probably going to be pretty juicy, and that ink is almost like, it's like using a thick paint almost, okay? So, it happens to me all the time, too. If I got a new pad like that, I'm having a little bit of control issues, so I have to remember just to blot it off quite a bit before I take it onto my scene, okay? Now don't just really just sop it up like that and then go on here and just tap it off a couple times and go. Kind of test it out a little bit, Use a very light touch and just apply accordingly, okay? So that's that's the only kind of troubleshooting little area when it comes to this type of technique right here. This is an easy technique if you make it easy. If you make it hard, then it'll be, it's a little bit more precarious. But it doesn't have to be. Okay. Alright, so see that kind of coming around? Now it looks kind of weird because I don't have my moon illuminated at this point in time. So let's add a little bit of illumination to it, okay? Let's see here. Let's take our white paint pen. Okay, this one's a Miaosun 0.7 millimeter paint pen. Now I don't know how super distinct I want to make this moon into a heart. Let me get this flowing here. Okay, I need to shake this up right here. Put the cap on first, otherwise you can use this like a little splatter painting type of thing if you have the cap off sometime. Alright. I think that's flowing. It's hard to tell when you're scribbling on a white piece of paper. Okay. Alright, now I didn't shake this up too much, so it's coming out quite translucent, almost transparent, okay? But I'm wondering if I want that like that. Okay. Yeah, actually now it's flowing a little bit more. I was thinking I might want it a little bit lighter just so it isn't so perfectly distinct, but I don't know. We're working with distinct now. All right. Don't worry about getting like a super smooth application of this either, because I'm going to show you what to do with this moon right here that's going to make it kind of have a little bit more character and more indicative of it being a light source, okay? Alright, so see that right there? I like this, just this horizon line as it is. One of these days I'm not going to stamp anything down here. I'm just going to do like this kind of seascape. Okay, so I'm going to go and kind of make this into a little bit more of a heart like this. It'll be a little bit more subtle as a heart type of shape right here. See that right there? Doesn't that kind of look a little bit heart-ish, you know? I mean, it might be kind of subtle. All right. All right. Now here's the thing that I'm kind of debating. It's whether or not I want to add more of my tone in here before I stamp at my imagery. With this paper right here, it's non-coated, you know, porous paper, so I could probably stamp my imagery and then go over it again with the white paint without it, you know, kind of having to wait for it to set up too much. But I think I am going to add a little bit more tone before I stamp at my imagery. I'm looking for my paper towel roll. I need to go get some paper towels so I can add in some other types of cloud formations in here before I do. Alright, I just found a bunch of, I don't know, paper towels on my floor. I don't know what they were doing there. Right around where I have my stamps kind of piled up, waiting to get reorganized back into their not drawers, but the rack or whatever. Alright, so that's my kind of rough shape right here. You don't need to be a paper towel ripping expert. We've been doing it all our lives, but there is kind of a grain to paper towels. If you rip them one way, it's like a straight line. That's not going to give us, like, you know, a nice curved area to our clouds. So I don't know, just kind of get yourself a good shape like that. And I don't just keep this static either. I think I did early on. See, I would just keep it like this, okay, and just keep going on there. Now, see, I'm kind of like halfway on my paper towel and halfway on the paper. I'm not like just down here going like that. I'm more up here, okay? But see, as I do that, what I do is I'll just kind of move this around like so. You can kind of just keep moving this like this. And I think, I don't know, it becomes a little bit more, maybe just a little bit more natural looking in terms of clouds. I mean, clouds, there could be a very still night or something like that, but clouds in general, I mean, if someone took like a time lapse, you know, movie of clouds and just played it back, you'd see these clouds kind of moving, and, you know, spinning and just you know, moving with the the uh, the wind patterns and whatever. If it were during the daytime, there might be thermals or something like that. All right, so see that right there? It's just kind of, I don't know. I really like the look of this type of thing like this. All right. My simple thing, if you haven't watched my videos before, this is kind of a cloud coming from below, right? It's like billowing up like that. All right, and here's the thing. When you come this way, now your clouds are going to be bottom lit, right? Because you have the moon underneath, okay? It's not going to be wrong or something like that, you know, if you kind of keep the billows all going upwards, but I just think this is it kind of reiterates lighting a little bit more when you have these clouds up here over the top of the moon, bottom lit, okay? I'll show you what that looks like here. Now, I am being extra conservative in terms of the amount of ink that I'm using. I really need to get a re-inker for this pad. It's, you know, it's very light. But anyways, here you have this bottom lit cloud over the top of the moon, right? And these ones are top lit, okay? See that like that? If you make a mistake and you do some top lit clouds over the top of your moon, that's not going to be, you know, bad, okay? It's not like that. Or you might make some bottom lit clouds under the moon, okay? Don't even worry about it. Anything stamping pretty much should be a fun type of exercise. I know people want, you know, certain things a certain way, but I think that stamping is one of those things in this world that should be just a fun exercise. Not that you can't, you know, we want to put ourselves into, you know, learning situations where, you know, we're stepping outside of our comfort zones, but, you know, it's kind of all in the sake of growth and, you know, learning. And I know stampers all love to learn. Everyone always wants to know what the latest things are, you know. Stampers flock to new things and taking classes and eager to take classes and travel to take classes and, you know, pre-order, you know, new things coming out all the time, you know, sight unseen a lot of times. So kind of take that same spirit into the application of your media too. All right, now what I'm doing is I'm freehanding this in here, and I'm just kind of building up some of these clouds that are right around my moon, and I can kind of give my moon, remember what I was saying, don't worry about the, you know, the application of that paint pen over the moon, because we're going to give it a little more character, and what I'm doing is I'm kind of creating this little glow coming from the moon by using this and just going right over the top of it and, you know, probably about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch out to the side. And then you get that glowing type of look like that, you know, where the edge isn't quite as extreme, you know, in terms of a crisp edge to that moon. You know, crisp edge would look fine too, but I think this looks a little bit more like it's illuminated. Okay. All right, now I have some imagery that's going to go down here, but this is just adding some, it'll be kind of backlighting. Okay, now I want to add a little bit more illumination down here too, to make it a little bit more, I don't know, kind of exciting in terms of creating a little bit of contrast down here. Okay, so like that. So that kind of create a little bit more contrast and reflected light. Reflected light. the light source, and everyone's kind of mesmerized at looking at, moons out in nature, but people also like looking at kind of a body of water with that light reflecting off of the surface. That's also kind of a real special type of visual, for people, including me, definitely. Okay. I mean, I can even put, this mask right here and create, some more definitive lines if I want to. And that's always fun to do. All right. Let's kind of add a little bit more of this while we're at it. Let me do it with a Q-tip, though, okay? You want a soft application, then kind of give yourself a soft... See, this tip right here is kind of smashed and unwound a little bit. And I can go a little bit more into specific areas. I'm just barely tapping it. I'm not tapping it real hard. And some people say, oh my gosh, I have too heavy a hand, okay? But, if someone was applying makeup to their child or grandchild or whoever, family friend, let's say they were going out for, they were going to be in a play or trick-or-treating or something like that. Let's say you're going to put a little bit of makeup on them and they were like 2 years old. You're not going to have problems with a heavy hand. So just think of it like that. Think about, just that's the analogy I tend to make, just imagine you're applying makeup on like a 2-year-old's face or something like that, or a 3-year-old. Don't be so delicate as, you're doing it on like a newborn or something like that. You can go more than that, but yeah, I don't know, 5-year-old, something like that. So now I'm kind of bringing out some of these clouds a little bit more like this. There's a silver lining to every cloud. See that right there? You can just kind of spotlight it a little bit, like this cloud on the, over here is kind of facing the light, so you're making it a little bit lighter on this side of the cloud than on that side. Okay? See that right there? It's subtle, right? But you have a lot of control over it because you just, you just lightly dab it on in one area like that. That's a little bit too much, so you can just kind of blend it out a little bit too. See that right there? Yeah. It's just really fun stuff. You can add it down here in the water too. If you get a little blob of it, that's okay. It becomes what they call specular light. It's that little kind of a glistening, kind of reflective light. That's light that's brighter than white. Okay. So that little bit of reflective qualities in there. Okay, let's take a look here. Let's grab our imagery. I need to clean off my cling foam here. It's getting less clingy. I've been using these stamps so much, they're getting a little bit dusty. Okay, so let's go for the Lakeside Cove. Remember how I wiped off the perimeter of that moon stamp right there? So this line right down here, I created that line, that transition line, so you can transition off from those images. But if you're doing it in such a dark color, what you do is you just kind of wipe off the bottom right here, okay? And that will kind of fade out on the bottom really nicely, like so. Okay. Let's see where the horizon line is. It's roughly about right here, so I'll go about like so. I'm roughly going to aim my Lakeside Cove, the horizon line on Lakeside Cove, with that line that I established. Okay, see that right in there? Alright, now we're going to finish off this on the edges right here. Oops, my video started. Video started on my computer across the room. Video that I shot earlier today. We have stamping gremlins in my room here. Okay, so this is the Pines and Rocks small here, and we'll add that to the we'll flank our Lakeside Cove there with this to create a little bit more depth within the scene. Okay. Like so. I'm stamping this one on this side. It's, I don't know, it's probably halfway off the page. Like so, okay. See? And I'll do another one over here. We're going to overlap our Lakeside Cove image with this. I think it might not stamp out in that crease, but I'm not really worried about that. You know, the pre-folded card has that crease in there, so it's obviously, the image isn't going to get into that crease, but, you know, I'm fine with that. You can see it right there, right? I'm not really worried about it because this card is going to be folded anyway. With the thing about these cards, too, this could be the interior spread, or it could be the exterior spread. You know, the exterior of the card, the front of the card. Alright, so that. Let's go for a few more impressions down here. Okay. I mean, I can do that down here. I can come down here where it'll be a cove coming around this way, or I can come back up here where it kind of comes out and then it goes back around, or I can stamp the Lakeside Cove again in here, you know, where it looks like, you know, the side of the lake's going in and out, or near, far, near. You can do however you want. I can even come over here, and this could be like the wide open area that opens up into a greater expanse too, and leave space in between. All kinds of different possibilities. I'm thinking about going back with that Lakeside Cove again. I think I like that idea of it kind of coming out and then going back around like that. Alright, let's see if I can get this on here without getting my hands all gooped up. Okay, I'll use the paper towel here to press this down here a little bit more firmly and securely. Okay, oh, wipe off the bottom. Okay, about a 1/4 inch or so. And we'll come back around at the top. I'm not really so worried about the horizon line here because I don't have a real definitive line of that white ink in this area. Okay, so you have something like that. All right. Now, I think that looks pretty good, and, you know, being that we have the darkness of the purple paper anyway, we don't have to do what I'm going to do here, which is I'm going to give it a little bit of extra tone in here using some black ink, okay? Let's just use my paper towel here. Okay, this is my ink applicator. High tech, isn't it? And we'll just get some black ink on here, okay? Now remember what I said about kind of using a drier version of whatever ink you're working in, okay? So, you know, you kind of wipe it off like that, and it kind of sets the surface kind of, you know, with the texture that I want. And see this right here? I'll show you what I'm doing right here. I'm doing this. That is easy to do, all right? It's a little bit more precarious if you're just working with a, you know, real thick, blobby, you know, super thick ink, okay? This barely shows up, but you just kind of develop it right there, and it's easy to do. Go with kind of go with easy techniques and user-friendly techniques, okay? And it'll just be so much easier for you. There is like literally, well, I don't know if there's literally, but there's almost nothing you can do wrong when you're just working with like a 2% gray, you know, when applying this ink. So it's 2%, 4, 3%, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you know, and then you get like a 10% gray right there. If it's even that, it's probably even lighter than that at this point in time because I've already used it so much. But see down here where you make kind of the shadows of this 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay? See how like it adds that little shadow right there? See how it's a little bit darker than this purple over here, right? Now, I mean, I do need, this is getting ridiculously dry, so just ink up again. Blot off a little bit, okay? And when you first start using it, just use a lighter touch, okay? Alright. See that right there? See, look at that shadow that it kind of created right there. Isn't that kind of a more defined kind of shadow in there? And, you know, let's add it around that shoreline right there a little bit more, okay? Use a lighter touch. I'm, you know, putting this on a 2-year-old's face right now. Okay. I'm doing it right along that shoreline right there. You can kind of put a few little streaks in the water. I kind of like those streaky kind of action, like that. It's a little bit farther away from the moon, so maybe add a little bit more tone over that in that direction. All right, so see that? It's just, I don't know, it's subtle, but you know, you can see where it's in here, it's in over here. And again, this is what you're working with like that. See that right there? But when you work with something like that, what you're really doing is instead of having a pad that's like a 2% gray, a 5% gray, a 10% gray, 50, 60, 70, 80, you're getting all of that from one ink. So you don't need, you know, if you're using it like this, I still have gray inks, okay? I'm not saying don't get, you know, other inks, but you could, in theory, get every version from full saturation all the way to white with any ink that you have in your collection, and you can expand exponentially, infinitely, all the values of any types of your inks just by using lighter, drier versions of them, right? Doesn't mean that, you know, I'm not advocating for less, you know, everyone should only have, you know, 3 colors of ink or something like that, no gray, you know, just all black, okay? I love pads and whatnot, but, you know, for something like this, you don't need it, you know, in order to achieve this type of look, at least. So see this right here? Where I want it darker, I just apply more of it, okay? And where you want a lighter version, just apply less. The darker you make some areas of your card too, by contrast, the lightest elements, or the lighter elements will all seem, especially the lightest one. You make one thing in the scene darker, the lighter things seem one step lighter. Because you're just working with contrast here. Alright, I think that looks pretty good in terms of our tonal range in here. You know, 2 inks, right? It's pretty easy to do. Let me get rid of this little horizon back in here. I don't really need that back in there, so let's just tone that out a little bit. You know, where my white paint went in that area. Or white ink, I should say. Alright, so see, there it is right there. I'll hit it in the back here a little bit, just so we have it down here in the water. Let's create a little bit of a stronger vignette here. Let's make it a little bit darker right here. Darker right here. Alright. It's subtle, but does that kind of look like a heart? You know, when you look up closely like that? Alright, let's see what else we want in here. Shall we add some nice reeds here in the foreground? Okay. Just hit it with your Versafine ink. Or, I don't know, whatever ink you're using. This will work with the dye-based ink too. Dye-based inks are going to get a little bit thinner, so the blending process might feel slightly different, but it still work, you know, absolutely fine. Okay. Creating a little bit of a shoreline here. We're obviously on the opposing shoreline. Okay, let's take a look at that. Down in here, it's fairly subtle because it's, you know, I used a lot of darker inks down here, but especially you can see it right here in the lighter area. Alright, hopefully this doesn't look spooky to you. Hopefully it looks kind of romantic. I don't know. A lake under the moonlight. 2 people out for a stroll, maybe. Oh, here's a little loon. I'm going to put this one into the scene. Okay. I think I'm going to stamp 2 of these, okay? So it's like this, right here. And it's Valentine's Day. Let's add another one down here. I'll just kind of make it lower in the horizon. I might be stamping the other one off some too. So there we go, like that. A couple loons like that in the moonlight. This is some little water lily grass here. I don't want to stamp it over the top of the loons, you know, because I want those loons to be nice and, you know, their silhouettes to show nicely. So I'll just go like that. Alright, it's a little bit more subtle like that. Okay, see there, a little bit more texture right in there. And let's go back to our paint pen here. And let's add a little bit of this moonlight onto these rocks. Let's zoom in here, like so. these kind of dark paper scenes have a lot of there's a lot of mood and atmosphere, don't you think? Something like that. I don't want to have it glisten maybe too much, but all right, here, let me change the exposure of this camera here. All right. When I zoom in like that, it's still exposing for all this white paper around it. I need to change the exposure. Okay, so that's, you're seeing it more along the lines of how it looks here to me. I'm just putting these little ripples down here like this, or these little specular light glistening little flashes like that. Kind of brings that area to life a little bit more. About like so. See that? Little highlights on those rocks in the background, so that when you zoom out like this, you have these little flashes of light, which are really nice. And then, I don't know, you can put it on, some areas right here in the sky as well, maybe in some of the lighter areas where it's kind of reflecting some of that light. This is a really dark scene, so I'm not going to put too much in here. It's only might be 2 dots on a cloud or something like that. But do you see that heart right there? it's pretty razor thin, subtle. I could make it more obvious, but I think I'm going to leave it as is. Okay. All right. Question is, I think I want to have this on the exterior of the card. I think this is how it's going to look. Let's fold it over like that. Okay. They open it up like this. Okay. So, I'm going to say Happy Valentine's Day here. I'm going to do it at, I think, an angle like this. A blob of paint came out. I used this on some pigment ink, black pigment ink, and it clogged it up. Okay, now it's flowing again perfectly. Happy Valentine's Alright, so anyway, let's take a look here. It's a pretty simple composition right here, but I think it looks, reasonably complex, at least in terms of the emotional quality of it. I mean, it definitely sets a mood, these darker papers. And again, there's that little crease down the middle there, but that, seeing it kind of viewing distance, I don't know, that doesn't really bother me. So, okay, here's the thing on this one, in terms of technique. I added my sky figure in there first, and then I wouldn't be doing that and then toning over it if this was like on foil, okay? Because the foil, just, if you stamp these images, it's taken a long time for them to dry, working in something like a Brilliance ink, so I have to add my tones and my lighting first, okay? But on a paper like this, porous paper, it's not even like a cardstock, it'll absorb right in, so you can get your impressions stamped first. But I did that impression right there with, the lighting, and I did that lighting in there first, in here, before I stamped out my images. I mean, I could have stamped all this out first, my moon, all this stuff, and then added in that lighting, accordingly. I mean, that would have been fine. Where it wouldn't work so well is, let's say I stamped out this imagery first, and I wanted that cloud in back of this tree. You see what I mean? If I did that and I put that white over the top of this black, it would look like the cloud is in front of that, okay? So that wouldn't work that way. But let me show you what I'm talking about here, and this will add to the look, maybe tier 2. Now that I have this imagery down, if you do want some kind of translucency or opacity, in front of some of these images like this, see, I can apply this right over the top of that black. The black is, it's pretty well set and dry, so you can add this in here like that, and then see that little mist is in front of that rock, okay? So you just have to kind of, plan out a little bit like that in terms of your lighting. Let's add a little bit more of this. I think this might look pretty cool now that, when I started explaining, I thought, oh, let's do that. But see, like this, I can add this kind of misty fog right on the shoreline a little bit. See how I'm kind of just lightly dabbing that in there and building it up slowly? Like that. So see what I mean? If I wanted that cloud behind that tree, you have to put the cloud in first and then put the tree over it. But see, I'm kind of sandwiching this image right here in between pigment ink in the background and now pigment ink in the foreground like that, in the form of kind of this kind of fog on the lake type of situation here. Okay. Looks pretty good, actually. I really love working on... I've been working on metallics for so long, it seemingly, over this last month or so, that, I don't know, I'm kind of getting locked into that process. I need to do some color scenes, too, multi-color scenes coming up. I've been just using, like, black and white pigment inks lately, which is really fun. Sometimes when you're kind of learning something, you have to kind of do a deep dive into it, especially if it's something really different, to really explore the different kind of possibilities of it. So that's what I've been doing there. I've been doing, color, dye-based ink work for so long that I'm trying to, learn some new things. But okay, so anyways, you see that little fog down the lake? That looks pretty good, I think, to sandwich our, black impressions in between that. It looks kind of a little bit more dreamy, I think. But anyways, a little idea on the Valentine's Day card. A heart for a moon, celestial object. I think what would be interesting too is if you just did open sky like this, right? And then you had little stars up here, but you make some of them little tiny hearts. I think that would be really cool. Okay, so anyways, just a fun, simple little card. And, I don't know, just a really fun kind of technique to utilize with your pigment inks. But like I said, if you have a black dye-based ink, especially if it's kind of thicker ink, I think it would be a little bit easier, like a Memories or something like that, to lay down here. That would work perfectly fine from what I've experienced with, the uncoated matte dark cardstocks or papers or whatnot. Okay, so anyways, thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.